Hey guys, I know it's been a really, really long time coming. It's finally here. Noi Guide. I know. I've been postponing this passion project for about months on end. Month after month, week after week, day after day. Hours go by, and I'm still trying to find time to actually sit down and record, edit the footage, compile everything. And we're finally here. I know. Y'all can stop making the jokes about saying GTA 6 is going to drop before the Noi Guide does. We're putting those allegations down. But with all that out the way, I do want to clarify I want to make this video as professionally as I possibly can, as serious as I possibly can, because I put a lot of time and effort into this. It may not seem like it, it may not seem like I've been procrastinating, but I definitely just want to hurry it up and get the show on the road for you guys because I know you've been patiently waiting for as long as you have. So, with all that out of the way, thank you for being patient with me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Work has been not so kind to my personal time. But without that out of the way, let's continue. Okay, so before we do continue though, I do want to sit here and discuss that this little section of the video that we're going to be doing is going to be a structure to the video. Just so if there's any timestamps that I'll list below, if you're looking for anything in specific, just to make the guide a little bit more organized. We'll be covering over the move set, so things like the light combos, heavy combos, SP moves, basics, just things to keep rule of thumb, base and evolution, things we'll be covering in those little gimmicks, if you will. After that, we'll be covering over the combos, such as SP2 setups, SP1 SFA setups, traps, mix-ups, Oki setups, just basic things to help improve your Nnoitora gameplay or things to keep mindful of. After that, we'll be covering over the mechanics, such as techs, sidesteps, Oki, hitboxes, learning how they interact, range, the frame advantage, and unique interactions. Just cool things that I found when learning the character and just cool little things that not many people know about this character. As simple as he may be, it kind of overshadows the neat little gimmicks under the hood. After that, we'll be covering over the mindset, which is going to be a little bit more of a lengthy portion of the video. I'm not going to lie with you. I think this is going to help just give you a little bit of more of a flavor, some spice to it. Add your own personal sauce to the character, which will definitely be more useful. After that, we'll be covering how to play the character effectively. We'll be covering things over like what to do in specific scenarios, Oki scenarios, mix-ups, learning how to pressure your opponent. It's very important with Noi. There's two things that I cannot stress enough about, and that's learning your range and pressure. After that, we'll be learning management of fighting spirit and spiritual pressure, which should be simple and quick to pick up for a lot of people that are new to my channel. After that, we'll just be simply covering what not to do with the character, which already on its own should be pretty easy once we get to that subject. And then after that, we'll go over the closing thoughts, covering the guide over as a whole, just so starting off, we'll just be covering over the basic combos. Starting off with base, you could do first light, you'd be plus. 2 lights, you're also plus. You could trap off of 2 lights on block. 3 lights, you're safe. Following up with that, you could just go straight into light, light, heavy. You'd be doing a good amount of damage, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you're building for meter. You could just do light into heavy. You get noticeably more Oki and Evo, but for now, you could just abuse that distance and knockback and play off the neutral better. You can go into heavy, light, heavy. Personally, I like to do heavy, light, heavy as just a normal thing to keep in mind when playing Noise, so you're safe. His buttons kind of buffer a little bit weird compared to other characters. So just keeping that in mind that you're knocking on somebody's guard, you're throwing out the moves and everything, you could accidentally do full heavy on block. Now you left yourself vulnerable. So always keep that in mind when playing and doing those combos. it's easy to just make yourself safe rather than just taking the risk and eating the damage. Just because you're tanky doesn't mean that you should do it to begin with. So just keep that in mind when playing him in base. While we're on the subject of base, I would also like to cover over that in base, you always want to be mindful of your range, considering that you do not have Oki in it. So whiffing on Noi in base is a massive death sentence. You don't. He's not a complete character in base, so learning his range, especially since he's knocking his opponent far away, it's kind of hard to keep the Oki and the pressure on this early. So just learning the fact that you're just going to be playing neutral better here, you always want to be mindful of that. Dashlight, he has an extremely interesting property is that every single time it hits, he can always connect combo off of it. This is something that he does not have in Evo. It's something that he cannot do. Also, his Hakugeki is noticeably farther in base. You can snipe people with it. But also his SFA has no Oki on it at all. When landing it, you are knocking your opponent very far away. So it is either recommended to either step back away, maybe put on high arrow, step in, keep the pressure on, just overwhelm your opponent to the best of your ability. You can just play however you please in base. Just kind of play it patiently, but still keep the pressure on. Just never forget, this character relies on pressure. So just because he doesn't play traditionally like he does in Evo, doesn't mean that you should just be so carefree about it. Personally, I like to play his base better. Starting off in the game, I always love to play only in base. There would be several games where I would literally soul crazy people, and I wouldn't even Evo the whole time. So starting off with just learning your base gameplay, it's easier to learn the character as a whole once you master the early game of it. Late game becomes so much easier. Now, while we're on the topic of base, we'll also be just covering over basic things to keep in mind. He's plus off of his dash light, heavily plus. He's also plus off of his first light and second light, but because of those frame advantages and how light pushback works, as you're seeing in the clips I'm displaying above of what you can and cannot grab off of, it's kind of scenario specific. His first light, it's not the greatest. It's probably one of the slowest things in the fucking game. You can grab off of it on block. You can also grab off of it on... You can't grab off of it on hit. His third light, you're safe. On hit, you can grab off of it, but on block, for some reason, you just can't. You'll get beat out every single time. Things to keep note of, but because of his light startup, even though he's plus, he can jail in certain scenarios, but there are certain scenarios such as characters with a quicker light than him, which is a lot. You really can't do anything off of it unless you want to sidestep. Second light, you can sidestep. First light you can sidestep. Third light you can also sidestep, but that's very few characters can beat you out. Even though you're safe, there's not many characters that can actually knock you out of the sidestep itself. So personally, if you're going to do anything, I'd say on block, do 2 lights, grab 2 lights, sidestep, just continue to jail them as best as you can. A lot of the times they won't try to challenge you because they'll be too scared, which is what you want with Noi. You want your opponent to be scared. You want them to be trembling in fear because of you. So using 3 lights as a mix-up, it's not necessarily reliable. Personally, I wouldn't do it. I just stick with first light, second light, and your dash light. Those are going to be your best tools if you want to apply pressure the best you can. Always remember to sidestep with this character. While we're on the topic of sidestepping, I'm going to just showcase some things that you can sidestep off of on hit. You can sidestep on your first light, second light, third light. You can also do it on your plus for your first. On block, it's a little bit weird. You could just grab off of your first light on block. You can't do it if you do dash light into light. The block pushback is too much. However, if you do 2 lights into grab on block, that works as well. 3 lights, don't even try it. Don't even try it. It's just not worth it. Your opponent gets a free strike back. The fact that I'm doing it on Kenny and he's punishing me every single time, it's not worth it. On hit, however, you can. You'll get a strike back every single time, which is good for you. Now, while we're on the topic on base, I do want to do a little 180, a little bit if you will, back to knowing your range of the character. Something I did forget to mention, but I do want to point out is that his SFA has a very wide range, as you can see. So learning the range of your SFA is very crucial. If you're close enough, you can yellow. You can yellow off of it. But let's say if you were just at the tip, the yellow is going to drop every single time, which I do want to point out that can cost you an early yellow in the game. I will showcase a setup later, but for now, let's just try to keep it on topic as much as we can. I just wanted to bring that out to your attention. Now that we had that out the way, we can kind of go back to our regularly scheduled programming, if you will. So, when discussing his plus frames, as you can see above, his light just does not work on offline. Some characters he can beat out because of his light advantage. It's a little bit weird testing online and offline interactions, but it's just more reliable if you want to have it a little bit more consistent to just do 2 lights or 1 light off of block instead of just rinse and repeat lights. It's just more consistent. But few characters that can beat out that jail, which does carry over to Evo. We'll discuss that shortly. I'd say maybe characters with a tier 2 frame light or tier 1. Either one can easily just mash out of that jail and just beat you and get a strike back every single time, which you do not want. I do want to keep that in mind. I wanted to bring that up just so on the off chance that you're wondering why isn't this interaction working, that is why. So just be very careful with your jails and always be sure to pressure your opponent, but never throw the game just because you think something works but something doesn't. I'm trying to make this guide as informative as possible so you won't have to make the mistakes that I once did. Now let's get on to the next topic. Now covering over the next subject, that being the SP1 setups for base. You can do full heavy string into SP1. You can also do this on block. I wouldn't recommend it since you're minus, but if you're baiting out a mash, it will work. You could do light, light, light into SP1. Personally, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're just trying to build up for fighting spirit meter and reverse. You can also do a really funny interaction. You could do light, light into SP1. It does drop, but if they mash, you do get a strike back every single time, which I think is really funny. So if they try to press there, it will win every single time. You can also do full lights, like I just said, into SP1. Um, Another thing you can do is to space trap and fully charge your heavy. Do the heavy light into fully charged SP1. Because if they try to do heavy, 9 times out of 10, they will reach you depending on what character it is. But if they don't, that's a free strike back for you. So they're forced to backstep or ho-ho this. Same carries to light, light, light. SP1 fully charged. Noi in base, like I said earlier, is a character that has really good neutral because of how far he knocks you away. He's constantly keeping you at arm's length. But it's really counterintuitive for him as a character because he doesn't have Oki in base. So having moves that push your opponent far away, you really got to have good fundamentals in base in order to make the most out of this character. Good pressure, good reads, good spacing, just overall learning your range, constantly having different angles is absolutely crucial. Now for the next subject, we'll be covering over the SFA setups. You can do a grab into step in SFA. This is completely inescapable. They have to hold this or DP. You can do a dash light, utilizing your plus frames into a armored SFA. You can also just straight up do a dash light into light light armored SFA. This is one of the more practical mixes. A lot of these are a little bit simple, but some of these are a little bit technical heavy. You'll find that as a common trend in base Noi. You can also do dash light into light armored SFA. Personally, I wouldn't recommend it. I like doing it, but I'd mainly just do 1 light. You can also do up close strike back Hakugeki into a step in SFA. I find this one of the more harder ones to do because of how scenario specific it is. Or you could just do one of the more saucier ones, that being a Hakugeki into Ho-Ho Whiff SFA. But do note that any of the step tech that Noi requires, such as like strike back or anything like that, if you have white active, it will not work. Because of how white works, it speeds up your movement recovery, allowing you to step in even faster. So having a little bit of a timing while, or just more of a situational awareness when white is active and when it isn't, does help, especially when trying to pull off any of this tech, be it practical or not. So do keep that in mind. Next up, this is going to be just a little bit more of an easier section to understand, is the meter gain of the combos. So just going into 3 lights will just give you roughly 6. Going into dash light into light, light, light will give you 8. But interesting enough, Noi gains more meter when he does heavies. I've noticed this is like a common trend with a lot of his tech, how unique this character is because of how his multi-hits work. A lot of his combos really depend on his multi-hits per button. So, for instance, if you were to do, let's say, Hakugeki in the middle of your combo, sure, you are getting more hits. In theory, you would be getting more damage, but you couldn't be any further from the truth. Doing Hakugekis in the middle of his combos into yellows will only nerf your scaling even further. So, getting a good idea of the meter gain of just doing heavies for just simply gaining more SP meter is always a good rule of thumb to keep in mind. Now, without that out of the way, I know that was quite a big of a mouthful to a big info dump, and I cannot stress enough how how compiled this guide is so far. So, if you've made it this far, I am very happy that you stuck around. And all of that was just base, by the way. I want to point that out to you. Noi has been a character that I've stuck with for a very, very, very long time since release. So learning a lot of these things I found out on my own is quite mind-boggling a little bit now that I'm actually putting it down on paper and writing the script as I'm editing this. But it only goes up from here. In base, he is the most technically advanced he could possibly be in his kit, but that doesn't sneeze by any of the shit that he can do in Evo. With that out of the way, how about we get into the next juiciest segment of this guide? Now, this is where things get interesting. Noi Awakening. He gets a absolutely massive upgrade to his kit. His heavy is slower, but the trade-off is that it hits further. And then his light actually gets faster. Noticeably faster, and hits noticeably further too, which is a much needed change to his kit. Not only that, the distance of where his opponent is knocked away from his heavy is reduced, meaning he has Oki off of it, and not only that, he can loop. But he can only do this once, though. So, but he can still keep the pressure on. Not only that, the distance of where his SFA knocks his opponents away is drastically reduced, meaning he can apply the pressure even more and has another useful tool to his kit. His dash light also is noticeably a lot further. His SFA can be looped twice. It's not necessarily recommended because you do have to do a little bit of a micro walk, but if you feel like you want to do that, you totally can. Now, without that out of the way, he's got some pretty nasty SP2 setups now. He's only got access to 2 new ones in Evo, that being he can step in off of his heavy string and do an SP2, or he can just do an SFA into his step in SP2. However, bigger body characters, I'd say maybe you can do a little bit of a delay before you do it. You can just do a little micro walk. I wouldn't recommend it though, however. It's easier, just safer, just to do a step in after the SFA. But you can choose to if you want, but I'd say it's safer to just do the step in if you don't want to risk it. And with that change to Evo, his grab into step in SFA has not left. It's still here and it's still functional. However, your opponent does have to mash Ho-Ho or DP out of it. And same with his Ho-Ho with SFA. It's a little bit riskier to do in Evo because of how it works. The Ho-Ho follow-up has you extremely close to your opponent. So if they have the ability to punish a Ho-Ho, their tracking will adjust in time before you can hit them. So unless you're doing this mix-up, I do advise having armor on beforehand. Now, with these new changes to his kit in Evo, it doesn't stop there. He does have access to a unique gimmick to his SIG he can only get access to in Evo. He can quickly act out of his SIG upon taking damage as he's casting it from neutral. So if you try to do this in the middle of a combo, it will not work. You have to drop it and then predict your opponent to mash. You can either do a light, SFA, or a heavy, depending on the scenario. But this does give him access to some neat, juicy setups that he can do and some neat mix that he can get access to in Evo. And while we're on the subject of Evo, he does have a neat little interaction with his combos. He gains multi-hits on all of his attacks except for his starting hit. His initial heavy does have 2 hits or 3 depending on if he has arms or not. This does not affect his first light, however. It affects his second light, his third light. It also affects his first heavy and his second heavy. It also affects his SP2 and it also affects his SFA, increasing the number of hits, therefore increasing the damage, the meter gain, and just overall, just you're doing a lot more. You're doing a lot more when you have arms and an Evo. So just remember that. This is a neat little thing I thought I might add. Also, while we're on the topic of Evo, it's a little bit of a little mechanical thing to keep in mind when playing Nnoitora, is that he has very many ways of applying Hyro safely on block and or on hit as a form of mix. He can do it off of heavy Hyro, heavy light Hyro, heavy light Hyro. He cannot do it on full heavy string on block into high arrow though. However, he can also do it off of SFA, but personally, I wouldn't recommend this unless you try it in base. Also, to keep in mind is that Nnoitora has Oki off of his Ho-Ho follow-ups now. Meaning if your opponent mashes and they try not to respect you, you could just simply give them a big middle finger and just say, no, it is my turn. However, they can backstep or Ho-Ho it, but 9 times out of 10, they're probably just going to either block or backstep. There would be no reason to ho-ho unless they're just trying to go for that last little winning point of the game, which is a good mix-up to keep in mind, is if they know about your Oki and they think you're going to press and ho-ho mash, that's a free punish for you. Also, to keep in mind is if you try to do the Dashlight Oki off of his ho-ho follow-up, albeit up or downwards, you are not going to be able to connect the Dashlight. However, if you do get a Hakugeki Strike Back in Evo up close, you can do a Dashlight to continue the pressure. However, you cannot do his SFA that you would be able to in base due to the Hakugeki end lag. So do keep that in mind. Also, another thing to add to his Oki is that his pressure is indeed strong, and the fact that he keeps you so close is such a viable tool. Problem being with that, though, is that most of his Oki is fake. If you try to step in and your opponent has a quick like and you mash and you step in, you will get punished every single time. So just be wary of the pressure that you're trying to apply and your opponent is wary of it. You will get knowledge checked on this Oki. Please keep that in mind. And on the topic of Oki, we do also have to turn it around a little bit if you don't mind. Thing is, base, he does not have any Oki at all. It is purely all neutral gameplay, even on his ho-ho follow-ups and everything. Pretty much the most you can do is just do Hakugeki, as heavy and Dashlight will not connect at all. You can do a Hakugeki step in into another Hakugeki or to a Dashlight, depending on the distance. But personally, I wouldn't recommend it. As you can see how far away the ho-ho knocks you. It could be a bit troublesome. It could be pretty rough. So, when playing Noi, always be mindful of your range. Always be mindful of the distance that you knock away your opponent. It's crucial to his gameplay. Like, even when I try to knock them down with a ho-ho follow-up downwards, you could just see that the Dashlight just does not connect at all. It's a bit, like I said earlier, it's counterintuitive in base. So having good neutral, having good fundamentals, having good read, having good pressure, having all of those tools under your belt, you really get to make the most out of this character. However, you can Hakugeki
after your whole follow-ups either downwards or upwards, but that is extremely risky if your opponent can sidestep it perfectly, or if they step back, they can close the distance and hit you whenever you're in range. However, they are not in your range, which I know that sounds a little bit weird, but there are characters that are capable of doing this, and you will get punished every single time. Now, with that all being said and out of the way, we have quite some info that I dropped on y'all. We went over the move set, we went over the combos, light combos, heavy combos, SPs, moves, basics, covered both base and evolution. Also covered some of the SP2, SFA, SP1 setups, traps, mix-ups. Covered quite a bit. Covered some tech as well, and I like to say it right here, right now, is that we got a lot more coming up. So if you guys want to stick with me and see from the next video, you'll be able to cover through the rest of it. Anyways, thank you guys for sticking with me and listen to me yap for about 25 minutes as I'm recording this. So anyways, I'll keep you guys posted. Peace out.